So he's going to be talking about using learning theories to improve debriefing. And Dave, just a little bit about Dave. He is the manager of clinical simulation at Penn State Hershey Medical Center. He earned his doctorate in curriculum and instruction, so he's very well qualified to give this talk, and his master's in communication studies from Marshall University. He is a EMTP in addition to his educational doctorate, and very experienced in facilitating and debriefing simulation. He's a paramedic with experience as a flight paramedic, an EMS supervisor, and a manager of a hospital-based critical care transport system. And he has a wide range of experience in simulation center operations as well as education program development. He was the founding director of a large teaching hospital-based simulation center, and he helped expand the capabilities of an established pediatric simulation center. And he operated his own simulation education consulting company, serving a wide variety of clients. So I think, Dave, you've been at Hershey now for close to a year, and I interacted with Dave quite a bit when he was down at CHOP, and I'm really excited to have him share his work with us today. So I will pass things over to Dave just to orient you a little bit to the webinar series. Our goal is to promote learning, community, and advancement of pediatric simulation. So they're recorded and posted. They're free to join. And if you have any topics, ideas that you'd like us to have, please let Taylor and I know by clicking on the link on the webinar page on the website. And please, I encourage all of you to go on the website now that these webinars are available and view them and or share them with your colleagues. So really, these webinars are hoping to be a meeting within meetings that allow us to share across the pediatric simulation community. We have some core topics: education, curriculum, research, technology, international simulation, program development, and others. And you can click on the website at ipsim.org if you want to send us information. So it'll be 20 minutes didactics followed by 20-minute discussion. Your microphones are muted. If you get a chance to ask a question, please list it in the chat box on the bottom right. And we're excited to have you join us today. So I'll pass things over to David. Thank you so much.
Okay, good morning, folks, or wherever your time zone you're in. Good day to you. My pleasure to be here today talking about using learning theory to improve debriefings. Learning theory is a favorite topic of mine. I've presented on it at a couple different places, so this is one of those topics I could spend all day talking about. But I'm going to try to consolidate this down into the next 20 minutes or so into a couple of theories that haven't really been promoted well within the simulation community, and I think they have great relevance, maybe even more relevance than some of the other theories we have utilized. First off, I have no disclosures that are relevant to this topic. And at the objectives, we're looking at three primary objectives, looking at brain-based learning theory, which is one of the items, one of the two theories I'm going to talk about, and seeing how that theory can be applied to debriefings. And also we're going to look at adult learning theory as well to see how it can impact some of our debriefings. So why does this matter? Why do we need to think about theory as part of our developing simulations and debriefings? Well, often, healthcare is very bad about this. A lot of our success is frequently dumb luck. It's when we do succeed, it's in spite of ourselves. As one author wrote, often what we do in the healthcare curriculum is a result of tradition, ritual, culture, and history. When we look at what happens, again, that success may be unpredictable and often occur by accident. We need to do better with this and not leave things to chance. By doing that, we can provide more value to the simulations and debriefings we provide. Now, first off, there is no simulation learning theory, but what we do have are several learning theories that are already out there that we can find and apply to the simulations we're doing. Because of the great variety of simulations we do, from task training to team training to critical thinking exercises, there is no one theory that can be applied across the board. It's my belief that we have to look at the objectives, look at the participants, see what is involved in each of the tasks being simulated, and really find the learning theory that best supports that methodology. And by doing so, we'll be able to look at the education theory in a broader sense and really find what applies to us the best. Now, there are a lot of learning theories out there and a lot of learning theorists. And again, this is a topic that, I mean, they make entire college courses out of this. And so what I'm going to do today is concentrate on a couple of different focus areas. Again, not on the overall scope of what's out there. Now, one of the items that I really like is the concept of brain-based learning. Some people will call it the biological basis of learning, and what's showing up now in the literature is this is being called educational neuroscience. This is a relatively new learning theory, just in the last 15 or 20 years, where it's really gotten some good traction. And it has quickly built up a good following, including, you can see this quote here by David Kolb. David Kolb is the one that most people in simulation quote when they reference experiential learning and how theory can be applied in that respect. So even David Kolb, one of the most frequently cited theorists that we have, sees this as a way that we can really dramatically improve the way we teach subjects. Now, when we look at the brain-based or biological learning, there are several theorists in that, and I've got a partial preference to this pair, Renata and Jeffrey Kane. These two came out with a book in 1994 called Making Connections. It is a terrific reference book for getting started in brain-based learning. And when you look at what they wrote, one of their basic tenets really summarized to me just exactly what simulation was and how we should approach it, although that wasn't written for a simulation community. In fact, as you look at most learning theories are actually designed towards elementary and secondary education. There are very few learning theories actually targeting the older learner, or the learners that we typically deal with. But there's great transferability in a lot of those theories, and this is one of them. The Keynes came up with three basic instructional techniques that provide the foundation for their focus on brain-based learning: orchestrated immersion and complex experiences, relaxed alertness, and active processing. And when you look at each of these, there's a great deal that can be applied to simulation, and especially into the not only the way we do the simulation itself, but also the debriefings. Orchestrated immersion and complex experiences, that basically means we want to immerse students in a learning experience. That's what simulation is. So we go ahead and create a complex environment. And I threw this slide in just as a depiction of one of the early complex environments, 1969 with Sim 1. This is particularly important today as Stephen Abrahamson, who's sitting on the right-hand picture, sitting at the console, was the inventor of Sim 1. He just died last week. So one of the great grandfathers of simulation as we know it today. This was one of his early contributions. But we do create these complex environments, and we want to really stress that. It can't be too easy. We want to make some difficulty out of it. We want to make some sort of challenge out of it in order to stimulate the brain of the learners as they navigate their way through the educational experience. It also needs to be orchestrated. And when we look at that, and this is an example of the Children's Hospital Philadelphia stimulation development process that we developed when I was there at CHOP, it's just not a random act. You have to have a reason for doing something, and that reason needs to be relatable to the individual that is involved in the training. They have to see the purpose. And you need to really organize yourself about how you're going to develop this process, present the simulation, and conduct the debriefing. And so you need to have a plan for this, and so that's where the orchestrated immersion. So it's orchestrated immersion into complex events. When we do that, always keep in mind of your objectives. There's a reason you're doing this. And when we look at simulation, you're always looking at, and I just lost the image here, so hold on here. I may have clicked the wrong button, so I'm going to ask Katie to see if she can fix that for me. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. When we look at objectives, we really want to look for those objectives that are there for simulation to really benefit from, those higher level learning objectives. Where we do evaluation, synthesis, analysis, and of course applying, because that's oftentimes what the goal of simulation is. Those lower level objectives, there's other ways we can deal with those. So as we create that orchestrated immersion. Make sure that you're trying to achieve the right goals, the right objectives that make sense for simulation. The next concept they have in brain-based learning is this concept of relaxed alertness that the Canes present. This is eliminating fear in the classroom, but also balancing that with creating a continuing educational challenge in the learners. So there's a very fine line on that in which we want them to be challenged but not be afraid. And with this is a concept that many people in simulation have articulated, and I think the concepts in brain-based learning or educational neuroscience really reinforce this concept. When we look at the challenges faced in in simulation, this is one article from the Canadian Journal of Anesthesia, and it looks at reasons why people were worried about simulation, barriers. And oftentimes they commented about the fear factor of it, the stress, the fear of peers' judgments, the fear of inaccurate reflection of clinical activity or abilities. So we want to go ahead and make sure we create a safe environment for the learner so that they are not exposed to this risk of fear. Because what we want to be able to do is get them in the right zone on this map. We want them to be activated and engaged, and we try to get into this debriefing zone. So we don't want them to become in a situation where they're stressed, they're upset, they're having an unpleasant time. That is going to decrease our ability to really encode what we want them to learn into their brains. We want them to be engaged as opposed to deactivated. So this is the spot where we want them to be, and that is a balancing act. We've got to work on that.
Dave, your mic seems to be going in and out. It's out for a second now. I don't know if you can plug it and unplug it or something of that nature. Dave, I'm not sure if you heard me, but your mic cut out there. Can others hear me? Okay, so I guess Dave's computer just crashed, the wonders of modern technology. So he's going to relog in, and we'll kick back up in about 2 minutes here. So it looks like Dave's relogging in now, and I'll pass things back over to him.
Okay, technical glitches happen in these webinars. I think, I'm not sure what happened in that case, but something reverted back to some Adobe Connect page. Hopefully I'll get through the rest of this without that happening again. So as we have the debriefing zone on here, we really want to strive for that. Eric Jensen, Leslie Hart are two researchers, a theorist that looked at this and examined it. What Jensen really is articulating here is the fact that when a person is afraid and they're engaging fear mechanisms in their brain, that really does inhibit learning. Basically what happens is you go into a fight or flight syndrome, and most of your information is processed through short-term memory, and it is designed as a survival mechanism to get you out of the situation alive. And if it's just processed through short-term in this manner, it doesn't encode into long-term memory well. And so that's where we need to make sure we have that relaxed alertness. We want to create challenge, but we don't want them to be afraid. We don't want them to engage in that fight or flight syndrome. Leslie Hart referred to this whole process as downshifting. The third point that the Canes make is this active processing, allowing time for students to internalize the process and look at this information. A lot of what we do in simulation comes from Donald Schoen's book, The Reflective Practitioner, and where he talks about reflection in action and reflection on action. And reflection on action is where we get into our debriefing. In fact, he says at one point that if you have a simulation, the learning hasn't occurred yet. The only place for that learning to really take place is going to be in the debriefing, to allow for that reflection, allow for that internalization of the information they just received. Now we're going to shift gears quickly to adult learning theory. Now, adult learning theory is not new. In fact, if you look at the citation on this, it's 1925. Edward Linderman first came up with the concepts of adult learning. And some of the things he said in 1925 are the same things we want to reiterate in our teaching today. That adult education involves an exchange of vital experience. That's where we count on the debriefing to bring out points from people that can show that how they can relate this to their experience, how their experience has influenced their decisions. That's important. Adult education is based on personal experiences with reality rather than external authorities. We need these people to go ahead and internalize their information, see how it applies to their world, and really come away with new ways of thinking of how to do that. And his third point, this instructor is not a lawgiver, but a guide or a stimulator. And as people teach debriefing courses, this is a concept that comes up frequently. We're not there to give lectures, to present information. We're there to go ahead and guide individuals through a process of self-discovery so that they can go ahead and have that exchange of vital experience and really relate it to their own reality. In more modern times, Malcolm Knowles is seen as one of the great leaders in the adult learning theory world, and he had 6 basic goals that came up, and these were based off of Lindeman's work. And as we go into simulations, and especially debriefings, we need to be cognizant of this. One of the big items there, and is number 6, is adults like to be respected. And again, that's where if we go ahead and create a learning environment that minimizes fear but accentuates challenge, that's one way that we can go ahead and generate respect for those individuals. Other items on here, they're relevancy oriented. Again, we're looking back at that real world experience they have and seeing how they can apply the new things we bring up in simulation and have them articulate in the debriefing just how they can orient themselves to the process. Other concepts in modern adult theory, there's been a lot written lately in adult theory about concepts of power. And again, this kind of goes back to that fear in the classroom and that concept of the instructor as a lawgiver as opposed to a guide. And Stephen Brookfield has been one of the most prolific authors on this. And we really need to share the stage in a debriefing with those learners and really watch how powerful we become in that. And so we allow the learners to exercise their own power, to take control of their learning, and really do what they need to, develop the basic skills they need to become lifelong learners, so they can continue to progress their learning, even if we're not there. So that's another important concept that adult learning has brought out. Practical applications of this: 1, plan. Do simulations for a reason. Make them real world. Work with the right objectives. Make them relevant. So really do good, adequate planning. Establish ground rules, and this is particularly important in creating that safe environment of care, or safe environment of learning, so that as the learners come into it, they're able to go ahead and know that they can make mistakes, that they're allowed to change their mind, they can say something in a debriefing, and then based on the discussion, revise it without penalty. And when we're doing formative evaluations or formative simulations and discussions and debriefings in that manner, these are critically important. So create ground rules, make sure you know that your learners know the expectations in that this is a safe environment. And share. Use those debriefings to bring out experiences of learners. Help them bridge what they already know, what you want them to know. This is where we go ahead and make sure that they have that opportunity to reflect on action using Schoen's words, and be able to go ahead and bring out the experiences they have as a bridge to building up to new experiences and new knowledge. And so really pushing for that sharing and let them help teach themselves and teach each other, so we don't become the lawgiver in a simulation debriefing. So theory can help us predict success if we use it. We can help get a better product out there. We can borrow from existing educational theory. We find the right educational theory that works for our particular situation, our particular learner group, our objectives, whatever the case may be, and we apply that theory accordingly. And using that theoretical foundation, we can build better simulation-based educational products, improve our debriefings, and eventually generate better patient outcomes. And so that's my short presentation on, again, a topic I could easily